90 Day Fiance Happily Ever After Finale Recap, End of the Line. Since we were gifted with a supersized episode of 90 Day Fiance, Happily Ever Paola and Russ. Russ and Paola go to dinner to discuss their issues. The end. Okay, kidding again. But seriously, here's the nutshell. Paola thinks Russ won't talk to her about painful things. Her miscarriage and grandmother's death have hit her hard, and she's feeling depressed. Russ has been working a ton, and he knows it's tough to talk to Pao when cameras aren't rolling. He's sad too, though, and claims Pao pushed him away when he tried to reach out emotionally. Back home, Paola escalates the fight by accusing Russ of being gone too much even though he's the only one with a job. This fact is not lost on Russ, nor is the fact that these two seem to be overacting so comically that they can barely contain their giggles as they fight. For extra dramatic effect, Russ even turns to the camera crew to demand they stop filming. Just stop! He fake yells, wishing he had someone as legit crazy as Jorge to get him more camera time. They argue for a while before finally running out of line steam. Paola cries that she's sacrificed everything for Russ, but she'll go home to Colombia if he can't be there for her. Russ thinks Paola is blowing everything out of proportion, which she is. Oh well, there's no fixing this tonight. Bottom line, these two will be fine. But Paola and Russ, can you please be fine? OFF of television from now on? We're done. And one more time just because it bears repeating, get a haircut, Russ. Molly and Louie. Molly and her youngest daughter, Kensley, are out roller skating and pretending that mommy didn't just blow up their entire lives. Molly mailed divorce papers to Louie, who she hopes just signs the damn thing and gets out of her life for good. Olivia, who Molly hasn't seen in ages, shows up for skating and to immediately get barked at about helping her sister with her skates. Damn, Molly. Give the poor girl a hug. Olivia, who is the obviously most mature of the bunch, already knows that Molly won't likely acknowledge when a huge mistake she made bringing a stranger into their lives and expecting him to be an insta-father figure. Molly apologizes, but it's going to take a long time for Olivia to trust her again. "I loved him," Molly defends when Olivia questions her sincerity. Even though Luis is gone, for good, let's hope, Olivia still needs time before she comes home. At least she and Molly hug it out, which is a start. Since Molly has retained the services of Dupay, and Dupay, she hopes her divorce will be the start of her new life too. Luis has signed the divorce papers. As Molly signs, she reflects on the doomed girl's trip she took to the Dominican Republic, which resulted in accusations of voodoo and dance-offs in Space Jam shirts. This long, strange trip has been no bueno. Now she just has to attend Luis's green card appointment to make sure he doesn't get to stay in the country on her dime for the next 10 years. Pedro and Chantal. Okay, let's get to the good stuff. With Nicole's hair extensions still warm in her hand and River's face and neck scratched up like a ratty cat tower, Mother Chantal goes on her tirade. As she waves the weave around like a prize, she decries family Pedro in Spanish to the English-speaking camera crew. Man. They are very bad for my family, she monotone yells. While Chantal wails and moans in the background, the cameras pan to the table of food that Pedro donkey kicked before fleeing the scene. Also, River got bit. By Nicole? He doesn't seem fazed, more worried about checking his phone than checking his blood for rabies. Chantal thinks Pedro and Nicole planned this attack on her brother, even though it was River who seemed ready to rumble once tensions rose. Nobody puts their hands on my family, says Chantal while her mother shows us Nicole's hair and calls her a heathen. Meanwhile, Pedro and Nicole are likely back home changing locks and harvesting American dollars. Sometime later, Chantal cries and tells us she's not speaking to River because he's cut her off. I just really wanted our families to get along, moans Chantal, who's been stirring the shit between Pedro and her family from day one. She meets with her friend, Gigi, to discuss the nightmare she's created. After telling her tale of woe, Gigi's advice is to talk to Pedro. When she finally texts him back, Chantal finds out Pedro bought his sister a ticket home and that he wants to smooth things over. I want justice for my brother, says Chantal, obviously still seeing Pedro as the lone instigator of the fight. At home later, Chantal and Pedro finally talk. They both took their siblings' sides over one another, but neither of them thinks they're wrong. Pedro sent his sister back to the drive, which frees up a lot of couch space, but doesn't solve the root issue. Pedro blames the family Chantal, while Chantal blames Pedro and Nicole. Their families hate each other, they hate each other's family. Pedro never wants to see the family Chantal again. He stands by that karate kick too. Chantal tells Pedro her family will never talk to him again. He's like, sweet. He'd rather move back to the doctor anyway. But since he does love Chantal, he'll hang around for now and hoping River isn't waiting with a knife outside his window at night. Since there's no fixing this obscene clusterfuck, I'll say it again, Pedro and Chantal need to cut their families off for 1 year. No cabins, no flat screen TVs, no chicken feet. Come on, people. It's time to get a little bit more smarter. If not, life will continue to be a prelude to the tragic family Chantal Dateline episode and more than hair will be murdered in that show. Until they make a decent decision, Chantal and Pedro need some time apart. So Pedro will go to the doctor to visit his family, and Chantal will stay in Atlanta taking daily trips in the family van. Nicole and Izzy. The moment of truth arrives after Nicole and Izzy leave the marriage licensing office. At home, they tell Rosalie about the missing paperwork and, naturally, she blames her inept daughter. Inside she's celebrating, but Rosalie pretends to be super bummed that her daughter won't be officially catfished in a matter of days. I don't know what to say, whines Nicole, who doesn't even want to tell her family back home what's happened. Izzy says he's disappointed too and with a giant grin on his face. When Nicole calls her father to deliver the bliss news, he openly smiles and practically does a fist pump knowing his daughter's terrible decision has been delayed yet again. He does promise to research the paperwork Nicole needs, if by research he means continuing to sit in his recliner and wait for Nicole's money to run out. The harder task of telling Izzy's family, who planned and paid for most of the wedding, is up next. Nicole totally flakes out, forcing Izzy to deliver the news while she buries her head in her hands and letting her greasy hair cover her face. Didn't this very dense American check her paperwork? They wonder. Azan's sister is particularly upset, telling Azan that the family will lose $6,000 in deposits because of this mistake. Nicole won't even look at anyone, let alone take responsibility. That's truly all they need her for if we're gonna get 100 real.